Hello! Today we'll be starting the first two Mishnayot in Masechet Brachot, tractate of blessings. I want to dedicate these videos to, in the memory of Lenny Spodek, for an Aliyas Neshama for Yehuda Leib ben Yisrael. And, okay. So, the Mishnah starts with the idea of reciting Shema, when we declare God's sovereignty over us. So, we have to constantly remind ourselves of the God above us, and the Torah tells us that we have to recite the Shema b'shachbecha uvkumecha, when we go to sleep and when we wake up. However, the Torah doesn't mean that right when we go to sleep or right when we wake up we have to recite these the Shema. However, it means that when it's usual for people to go to sleep, we recite the Shema, and when it's usual for people to awake, we recite the Shema. So in that time frame. So the Mishnah starts by saying, so let me just get the page. The Mishnah starts off, Me'imatai korin et Shema be'arvit. From when is the earliest time to recite the Shema in the night? So, meaning, what time is are we allowed to recite the Shema at night? From when? So we know that it's b'shachbecha, when we go to sleep. So when is that going to sleep time really considered going to sleep for the vast majority of people? So the Mishnah answers, Misha she'akohanim nichnasin le'achod bitrumatan. From the time when the Kohanim, the priests, would go in to eat their truma. Truma is when all the farmers that would produce crops would have to give a portion of their crops to the Kohanim, to these priests, and they're obligated to give a portion of these crops to the Kohanim. However, there's something when a Kohen is in a state of tumah, of impurity. Well, he could acquire this impurity in various ways, from being in contact with a dead body, various other ways. And when he's in this state of impurity, he's not allowed to eat this truma, this portion of the crops. So, how does he purify himself from this state of impurity? What he does is he goes to a mikvah, right? I'm sure we know what a mikvah is. It's a pool of water from rainwater. It's not derived from a vessel, and what he does is he purifies himself in this mikvah, and at nighttime, not right after he goes to the mikvah is he pure, but that night after the sun sets, when the nighttime comes, actually it's not when the sun sets, but the Mishnah actually tells us that this time is when the stars come out. When the stars come out, he becomes pure, and he's allowed to eat this truma. So the Mishnah is saying that when the stars come out, which is the time when the Kohanim, who are impure, are allowed to eat their portion of the crops, which is when the stars come out, that's when the first time we're allowed to recite our Shema. So the Mishnah continues, Ad sof hashmir har yishona, until when is the latest time that we could finish reciting the Shema? It is until the first watch of the night. So the night is divided into 3 watches, and which is 3/3 of the night. And until the first third of the night, the first opinion in the Mishnah states that that's the latest time we could recite the Shema. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. This opinion is the words of Rabbi Eliezer. And the sages say, Ad chatzot. We can recite the Shema until midnight. And the midnight the Mishnah is actually talking about is not midnight as we call 12 o'clock in the morning. The day is divided, and the day and the night are divided into 12 portions. So on a longer day, an hour would actually be longer than 60 minutes. But at nighttime, on a short night, an hour would be less than 60 minutes. Or on a long night, an hour would be longer than 60 minutes. So this chatzot, this midnight, is talking about 6 halachic hours into the night. 6 of these hours that the night is divided into. So the halfway point. So then it can. Sorry about that. So enough. So the next opinion in the Mishnah of Rabban Gamliel says that we could recite the Shema ad sheya'aleh amud hashachar, until the first pillars of light come out, until dawn. The Mishnah continues with a story of Rabbi Gamliel. Maaseh sheba'u vanav mi beit hamishte. It happened one time that Rabbi Gamliel's sons came from a wedding. Amru lo, his sons said to Rabbi Gamliel, Lo karinu et Shema. We forgot to recite the Shema. We didn't recite it yet. Amar lahem, Rabbi Gamliel says back to his sons, Im lo ala amud hashachar chayavin atem likrot. If the dawn did not come yet, you're still obligated to recite the Shema. V'lo zo bilvad, ela kol mash amru chachamim ad chatzot mitzvatan ad sheya'aleh amud hashachar. So, now that we established that Rabbi Gamliel says even according to the sages, it's okay until dawn, which will contradict the ruling we stated previously. The sages say until midnight we can recite the Shema, but we'll answer that a little later. So Rabbi Gamliel says that not only with this mitzvah of reciting the Shema, but with any other commandment, whenever the sages say that the mitzvah is until midnight, we really have the whole night to recite, not just until midnight. We have until dawn. And he brings a few examples. Hekter chalavim ve'rama, a few sacrifices we brought during the temple era, which one was we would burn the fats and the limbs of certain animals on the altar, and this would be done mitzvah ta'achila mu'ashachar. This obligation, this commandment, we had the whole night to do. However, the sages declared that we recite, we do these obligations only until midnight. The obvious question would be why, which we will also answer a little later. V'chol ha'ne'echalin liyom echad. And also another example, which is sacrificial meats, that certain people who bring sacrifices are commanded to eat sacrificial meats until a certain time. So these sacrificial meats that one is only allowed to eat for one day, the mitzvah is that one could eat these sacrificial meats the whole day and the whole night, not just until midnight, which the sages declare. Right? So so the mitzvah, the commandment is until the dawn. So then we have the obvious question, Im kain, if so, lama amru chachamim ad chatzot, why did our sages tell us that we only have these obligations, these commandments until midnight and not till dawn, like is really the true obligation? So the Mishnah answers, Kedei laharchik adam min ha'avera. The sages, this is a very fundamental concept. The sages made us perform these commandments until midnight only because they wanted to prevent us from God forbid, us doing a sin. And the thing is that this commandment to recite the Shema is so valuable to us. It's from the Torah. God commanded us to do these commandments, and they're really important to us, and we really believe that God, this is what God really wants from us. So the sages say, we even want a chance that people would miss their opportunity to recite the Shema. So we're gonna make the deadline earlier, so that every person will recite the Shema by that deadline. And even if they miss that, they still have a little time. But at least we're not making anyone miss the biblical deadline. And the sages stated this fundamental concept so that no one would miss their opportunity to recite the Shema, and everyone would be doing God's will. So that is the end of the first Mishnah. Now we'll do one more Mishnah and then we will stop. So now the Mishnah just stated when the earliest time to recite the Shema of the evening is. Now it'll state the earliest time to recite the Shema of the morning. So the Mishnah states, Me'imatai korin Shema b'shachari. From when may we recite the Shema in the morning? So the Mishnah answers, Misha Yakir bin Lelavan. So the Mishnah answers that in those times, we know that like 2,000 years ago, there weren't any lights to distinguish. So the Mishnah states that when one could go outside and distinguish between white and light blue, that's the time when one can recite the Shema. So it's like around dawn time, a little past dawn, one can recite the Shema, because then at that point one can distinguish between white and light blue. So that's the opinion of the first opinion of the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer states, "Bin lecharti." One can only between a light bluish and like a light greenish. With that's when one can start reciting the Shema. So what's the difference between these two opinions? So between white and blue is a little easier to recognize, but then between light green and light blue, that's a little harder. So Rabbi Eliezer's deadline is a little later, meaning that you have to wait a little more in order to recite the Shema. The Gomer al Neitzachama. So the Mishnah adds that when is the latest time that we could finish reciting the Shema until sunrise. That's the latest time. And it establishes that in those times, obviously it's stating that most people would awake, as the Torah states that we recite the Shema uvkumecha, when we awake. Most people have already awoken by sunrise. So that's going to be the latest time that we're going to recite the Shema. Rabbi Yoshua states a different opinion. Ad shalosh sha'ot shekein derech b'nei melachem la'amod b'shalosh sha'ot. That we really have until 3 halachic hours into the day. The halachic hours I've said before, so which is 1/4 of the day. We have to recite the Shema. Why? Because most people, I thought, have already awoken by sunrise. Obviously, it's not the concept now, but and then that was the how most people would awake. So he states that the way of the princes would awake a little later, and they would awake 3 hours into the day. So we really have until 3 hours a day, which is the time of awakening, because princes awake then. Hakori mikan va'ilach lo hifsid. So let's say one does not recite the Shema in this time frame. He misses the time frame. So what does the Mishnah state? Anyone who recites the Shema after the allotted time frame has not lost anything. He's not doing a sin by reciting it after the time frame. It's the same as one who recites verses from the Torah, which is also a commandment that from the Torah, which is also a mitzvah, a commandment that we're obligated to. So one who recites these verses later has also has fulfilled the commandment to recite verses from the Torah. So he hasn't done a sin. Thank you for learning. Learn together. I hope we continue this, and it should be a zichus, a merit for an aliyas neshama for the neshama of Lenny Spodek to have an aliyah. Thank you.